All right, so what I'll do is I'll start with Unity just to kind of give an overview of it. And I can show you like a specific project and then how I would like make changes to it and start small, and then we'll see how we get on. But if you have any specific questions, obviously just let me know. But I just thought we'll use this one first. So first thing to keep in mind when it comes to Unity is the interface. It does help to, I think in an ideal world you'd have it on your computer, you'd be able to see it. What I sometimes do if I'm like observing someone, if I don't have like the same things, I'll just draw it on a piece of paper. But hopefully, especially if you've already able to see it, you'll have a basic understanding. But the main things to keep in mind is there are two main windows, game and scene. So you can see asset store, which you can completely ignore until you need it, and the animator, which is for specifically adding animations. Again, that's a bit more advanced, we don't need to worry about that for now. But these two are essential and you're going to use them right off the bat. The game refers to what your game will look like when you're playing it, and it will also show you what it looks like right now. So depending on how you set up your scene, I might be able to see it now. So if I go to here, I'm just going to quickly show you what I mean. I should be able to, so I think there's no camera. So right now you can't see anything. So that's why it's literally just darkness. So I will, it's weird actually. So oh, there we go. I don't know why it was refusing to change. Oh, that's why. Okay, my bad. Anyway, as I was saying, so if I hide this, you'll see it just says no cameras, but then you'll see, you wouldn't see anything because there's no camera, but you'll see the UI, which is here in the corner. I can hide part of it, so I'm not going to go through. Just again, as an example, and you'll see there is a camera now, but the UI is basically, most of the UI has been removed. So that's what is the game view, and when we hit play, you'll see the difference. But I need to bring that back for now. The scene view allows you to see everything. So, for example, I can go to my environment here. I'm purposely using geometric shapes just because it keeps it running very smoothly. If I start adding more complicated things, it'll slow it down. So this is my character. These are just some basic collectible items and my environment. So you can see you can manipulate the scene. Usually mouse is the easiest. Right click allows you to rotate, middle click allows you to drag the screen, and then left click is to select objects. You can, if you don't have this kind of mouse or if you're using a trackpad, do it manually by clicking on these tools here. So the hand will let you drag, this will let you move objects, rotate, etc. But once you do it enough, you start to just kind of make it second nature, so I didn't even think about it, I was just pressing the buttons. Anything that's in the scene will also be in the hierarchy, which is this on the left-hand side. So you saw me like already kind of using it a bit. So if I click something in the scene, it will highlight in the hierarchy which object I've clicked. And if I click something in the hierarchy, say I need to click something that makes sense, like a ball, it will highlight in the scene. So the two are connected. Sometimes you won't be able to select the thing you're trying to select, hence you want to use the hierarchy. Sometimes, if you know exactly what you're looking for, it's quicker to just do it like that. You can do searches, and that will really help sometimes. Once your scene gets really big and complicated, if I type in ball, it will show every object that has ball in the name, and then it will grey out everything else, and that makes it easier to interact with them if you want to make minor changes. And the next important element to keep in mind, whenever you select an item here, it will appear over here on the inspector. And this is where you can actually see aspects of your object. The default for every object is the transform, which refers to its position, rotation, and scale in the scene. Everything else is essentially optional. So you can see like I've added quite a lot here, but if I create a new object, what I'll do, just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to create a brand new scene. So you can see what it's like when there's literally nothing in there. And then if I say create empty, default name game object, and all it has is a transform, so I know where it is in space. So when I move it, you can see the values moving. So those are the essential components. There's one more element which is worth mentioning, which is, or two actually, the project itself, which is the assets. So you can build a basic game just by dragging and dropping things in. But if you have assets from Blender, for example, or you have code from another project, then you'll find it here in assets and navigate through your folders. It is good to keep these folders really organized. When it's not, it becomes very chaotic and hard to manage. Even now, I would say the number of folders that I've got here is undesirable. I prefer to use a structure where I've got a clear idea where my scripts are, where my levels are, or scenes, and where my assets are, like visual assets. I've also found a good strategy with compartmentalization, and we'll get around to this later, but if you are adding objects to a scene, try and keep everything that is related together. So what a lot of people do is they'll create one, I'm going to create a new folder, I'm just going to call it test scene, because that's what we're working on. And I'll put that inside scenes, so it's at least slightly organized. And we've got test scene, I'll put that all together. So what they do is they have a project, they have their scene, and then they'll do something like all scripts, and all, let's say, art assets. And then they might have something that's prefabs. Have you heard of prefabs before? No. That's cool. I always need to make sure I'm not like jumping. I guess that's probably what it stands for. I'm so used to saying prefab. So we'll get around to that. So the idea here is let's see if I've got any examples I can use so I don't have to like go and look for something. Let's go on avatar. So we've got this object here. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to duplicate that and use it as an example. So what's it, test scene. So if I'm correct, this is this is a 3D model. And I can put the 3D model in all our assets. And if I drag that into my scene, you can see he just appears like usually in the middle, but depends on where in the scene you'll navigate to. Now that I've dragged him into the scene, it's created an instance of this object. So when I had this one, you'll see if I try and open this, it doesn't work because I don't have the application for it. So I need to have like Blender or 3D Studio Max loaded in order to check that out, which I don't have on this laptop because it's new. But this object, if I drag it, so I'm going to come out of here, if I drag this object here, what it does is it creates what's called a prefab. This is an instance of the object that can now be duplicated over and over again. So I can do this, and you can see now 3 instances of the same object. You are going to be dependent on prefabs. It's one of the most important things you're going to be using in Unity, so keep that in mind. The next thing we're going to do is I'll demonstrate why that's so valued. So I'm going to get toggle texture, and I'll get this one. I won't bother with animation for now. Keep it nice and simple. Because the animation takes a little bit of a while to set up. So I want scenes, test scene. So what I've done is we've got material and we've got texture. And I'm going to drag those into our assets because that's what they are. So texture is the 2D file, which you make. Sometimes you can make that using 3D software, sometimes you use a 2D graphics tool. I'm not an artist. My colleague who is an artist would have come in and explained that in a lot more detail than I can. But I can explain the basics. You have the 2D asset, which on its own doesn't do much. but you build it in another tool. In Unity, we have a material. You add the texture to the material, and then you can drop the material onto an object. Sometimes, if you try and drag a texture onto an object, it will automatically understand what you're trying to do, and it will create a material for you. But the more complicated the texture, the less likely that's going to work. So it's usually, you create a material first. So you can say create material, just going to call it test mat. And then here, oops, not here, sorry. Sometimes you just drag it in actually. There you go. So if I drag it in there, it's now created that material, and I can use this one, and it works. So you can't drag it directly onto the object, but you drag it onto the material drags onto the object. So you've seen that I've now created like 3 versions of this object. The original is in the middle. The one with the original material is on the left, and the one with the new material, which is a copy of it, is on the right. The thing that's useful about prefabs if I go to this one I made, and if I can press this arrow here. Sorry, actually, it's easier if I just go here. On the inspector, you'll see it says overrides. This is because I have changed the prefab instance from its original. So the original is that one in the middle. I've made a change. If I click revert, it will undo those changes and go back to its default. However, in this case, I want to do the opposite. I can do apply. If I click apply, whatever I've done to this one will now happen to every other version of that object. And this is why this is really useful. And this is what I was doing earlier with Battle Drive. I made a truck and I was editing the truck. And once I was done editing that one, all the trucks in the game would update. Hence, if I make a mistake, all of them will be wrong. Which is why the game wouldn't run while I was in the middle of editing it. But it just gives you an idea of how we use prefabs. And with that in mind, now you can see the original 3D object is here. The art asset is, the associated assets are there. If I come out of this, the prefab is here. And like I said before, I can now drag a new one in, and it will have the exact same features as the previous one. Now, going back to what I was talking about in regards to filing, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to make life easy. I'm going to delete